the month of May, the year 2023, and the world was still reeling from the aftermath of the pandemic. Society had changed, and so had I. Like many, I found myself lost in the storm, searching for purpose in the midst of chaos, and then I found it. I had always been drawn to storytelling, but it wasn't until now that I realized the power of my voice. And so, I began my journey into the unknown. At first, it was just me and the camera, navigating the uncharted waters of content creation. But with each video and each project I built, I found my voice. And with it, a community began to form. They say that every story has a beginning, but for me, this was just the start. I was writing my own chapter in the book of life, a story of resilience, redemption, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. More on that later in the video. Early on in life, I chose to stay out of the college scene and join the trades. I built custom homes my whole life and eventually wound up opening my own business building homes. But I have a couple of other talents outside of building houses. One is irritating my wife. Two is loving my wife. But in all seriousness, I've always had a knack of woodworking. So even on my days off, the wife was sure and is sure to keep me busy with her honey-do list. Building houses gives me a rare opportunity and first dibs at leftover lumber and pallet wood. This especially keeps the wife intrigued. Every day I come home from work, she somehow winds up right at the bed of my pickup truck before I can even get out. What are you doing?
What you do then?
I'm gonna do whatever you want me to do with it.
What is it?
That is E-Pay. Today, she found a couple of 4x4s and a piece of pallet wood. So you can have whatever you want. And thought it was perfect for the geese's house. There's Gus and Stewie right behind me wondering what Daddy's doing. Well guys, I'm building you a platform for your house. With a couple of geese, a ton of chickens, dogs, cats, and critters alike. Chicken coops, geese house, a wood shop, and a greenhouse. You may be wondering how we get away with it. Well, I chose to live where there is no such thing as an HOA. Where roads kick up dust. Where the paved roads is alien to us. No rules or regulations. So it's given me the freedom to build our dreams of a mini farm and a mini wood shop. The year of 2020 was tough enough, but as soon as it was 2021, all of a sudden it seemed like the price of everything went through the roof.
Is there a risk of inflation? I think there's a small risk, and I think it's manageable.
Well, look, I think I was wrong then.
Inflation showed no prejudice, and in my opinion, the cost of lumber went up so high it was almost criminal. The blue-collar worker was getting the short end of this stick.
Well, that's creating a surge in reclaimed
It was 2021. The supermarkets were out of toilet paper. We were consistently told, just listen to the experts. But it seemed that there were no such experts besides experts at blowing smoke. It seemed that nobody wanted to spend money, and it seemed that we would never return to normal. But then again, what is normal? The noise was so loud that the signal had vanished. And that's when I decided that enough was enough and began creating content in hopes to build a community and forge a path forward in case the worst fear of mine came true, running out of work. I decided it was time to start up an Etsy shop and stock it full of my jewelry boxes. I always knew that I didn't have to be great to start, but I had to start to be great. I was blessed to keep everyone busy, enough to make ends meet at least, but was definitely stuck with a lot of free time. And you know what they say about idle hands. So I made sure to keep busy. I started reaching outside of my comfort zone, and I knew what I was capable of and what I wasn't capable of. But I knew that I could learn if I just applied a little bit of effort. I've always been one to challenge myself, and a buddy of mine had some leftover veneer from a cabinet build that he did. I didn't have a vacuum seal, but what I did have was a little bit of logic and a lot of clamps. So we were able to build a beautiful modern shelf using this veneer and intuition. See, I started off in woodworking like the majority of woodworkers, with borrowed tools and a vision. I was no stranger to dumpster diving. While others would put things on hold, I rummaged through dumpsters, searched behind shopping centers. You see, I had experience finding wood. In fact, my whole wood shop is built from dumpster lumber. So once my wood shop was built, it was off to the races. Building, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and I quickly went from a hobbyist to selling my projects. So besides the awkwardness of filming myself, I was at least confident that I could inspire others and share my little bit of knowledge on YouTube. I recently turned 40 years old, and the older I get, the more I see that I appreciate the small things in life, like a rooster doing his mating dance, like the summer rain after a hot day, having to rush and put up my tools before they get ruined, listening to my wife come up with cool things to build for the yard, like this hickory bench, and like woodworking and the peace that it has brought me. What does a tomato cage, some copper wire, solar lamps, and some scrap wood have in common? Well, nothing really. But when you put them all together, they make some awesome outdoor decorations, which brings me to this solar chandelier. You see, woodworking isn't only about the cool joinery, the wood glue, or the fasteners. I let logic take me from point A to B, but I let my imagination take me everywhere. Using the borrowed tools I would have and learning so much along the way, I was getting better and better at cool projects, building things I thought I never would have thought of. I definitely didn't have money to be buying fancy jigs or fancy tools, so I had to improvise where I could and set up jigs myself. I was rigging up anything I could find to make life easier and make the project less time-consuming. I was starting to think I got in over my head with this project. As there is so many small pieces, each one has to be drilled out, and I had to attach each one with this small copper wire with fat fingers. What was supposed to be a simple DIY project was turning into an absolute nightmare. I was ready to throw this straight into the bonfire and just give up. I had to find a solution. And then I remembered that I'm bearded Viking. It's not in my DNA to just give up so easily. And I reminded myself of December 17th, 2023. the perfect storm. A rainy day, and I was in a crunch trying to complete a project to get it shipped out by the holidays, when suddenly the downpour and a king tide caused a flash flood. My shop was nearly 3 feet underwater. I was crushed. My world turned upside down. But over the next few days, my family and the YouTube community I had built showed that they were willing to build my spirits up and help in any way they could. I couldn't give up now. True resilience and determination in the spirit of humanity came together. Sometimes a little reminder of that day quickly whips me back up into shape. As my dad always said, tough times don't last. Tough people do. This little project had nothing on me. Let's get cracking. I remember hearing that you shouldn't look at your feet to make sure you're doing it right. Just dance. So I took each individual piece of Ipe and a piece of copper just long enough to be able to twist them around each individual ring. Now it was time to figure out how to hang this thing. I took the pieces I cut off of it earlier, trying to make a handle of some sort, but that wasn't working out too great. I decided it was time to take a break. If you've made it to this point without skipping, then you're well aware that we have chickens and geese and a lot of critters, which attracts a lot of snakes. And it just so happened that today, my wife decided to become the crocodile hunter. Where at? Let's go, crocodile hunter. I'm right behind you. Ooh. Oh, nah, I'm good. Thank you. Ooh. What you want me to do?
Back up.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. Grab that mother. Hell yeah. You got him. You got him. You got him. You're good. Why can't you grab him by the head? There you go.
I have the heebie-jeebies. God!
Well, stop having the heebie-jeebies. There's no time for heebie-jeebies. Should have gave me that damn glove. Don't let that f***er bite me. Good job.
Stop!
You did good.
Get in there.
Just think about your little chickens.
That's the only reason I'm doing this.
You old snake wrangler.
Even though the second one gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Heebie-jeebies, they gave you the hallelujahs.
Holy Ghost done grabbed hold of me.
We live 100 yards from the ocean, so we decided to take these two guys up to the boat landing and drop them off peacefully. Carry on, belly crawlers. Now that the heebie-jeebies and hallelujahs are out of the way, comment down below and let me know if your significant other would grab a snake. I have a feeling that there's not too many other wives out there that would be willing to do such a thing. And if you couldn't tell, I was actually the one that was losing my mind. I thought I handled it rather well. But the wife surely handled it like a champ. Carrying on with our solar chandelier, I'm drilling out this solar light just in a few spots to run some copper wire through, and then we'll just attach it up above on the top. You can find these solar lights at any box store or even a dollar store. They're only a couple of bucks. After you're done getting your light installed, go ahead and pull that green tab off and your light will be ready to go. It took me a while to find a good spot to hang this in my backyard, but eventually I decided to put it next to my hammock where I read in the afternoons and take my short old man naps. Being 40 isn't easy, you know. I'll just attach this 4x4 to a previous 4x4 that was existing. I'm going to cut a 40-degree angle on the top of this post and set another 4x4 post on top of it. That way I can get the height that I like. On the very end of my top 4x4, I'm just cutting a decorative bevel across the whole piece. I'm going to take my pre-drill and drill out a pilot hole for this big timber lock that I plan on installing. This thing is 8 inches long. Wow, that's a big sucker. I'll go ahead and install my eye hook and get my chandelier from out of the shop and see how this thing turns out. I'm excited. I made my first sale on Etsy back in December of 2021. And in 2022, I went global. I was selling to people in Germany, Australia, Hawaii. I put every dollar I made aside and started purchasing tools. I got this planer, and it's a 12.5-inch planer, and it's just big enough for this mantle to go through. This is an old fireplace mantle that I'm going to be turning into a sitting bench for around the fire pit. I'm going to take and just square up each end of this mantle with my battery-powered skill saw. It's a bit too heavy to handle over at the miter box. It's been 1 year to date since I started my journey on YouTube, and I'm at 129,000 followers. I am truly blessed and grateful. Thanks to each and every one of you. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the bench. I don't really know which direction I'm going to go with these feet for the bench, but I've got some 2x4 cypress set aside, and I think it's going to be just enough to make the feet for this bench. But there's only one way to find out. Let's get cutting. I'm going to be cutting each cut with a 9-degree bevel. The width of my bench is at 10.5 inches. I cut each leg at 13.5 long to short of that 9-degree bevel. I wanted to have the tops of my feet mount to a separate piece and then mount that whole unit to the bottom of the bench. But when I attached the 2x4 cypress at the top, I thought it looked a little bulky. So I changed my mind, took it back off, and we're just going to go with some 3/4 inch thick stock. I like how the 3/4 inch stock looks, so the only downside is now I have to rip my feet and the bottom to match the same width as that 3/4 inch stock that I have. But we'll take care of that at the bandsaw. Or not. Yeah, my shop is currently running off of an extension cord, so I am always tripping the breaker, and it drives me nuts. But where there's a will, there's a way. One of my favorite things to have in the shop is this Kreg pocket hole jig. This thing comes in handy. So we're just going to set some pocket holes in the bottoms of these feet. That way we get some nice support for the bench. Man, this thing is heavy. I'm going to lay out the legs off of each side at around 10 inches. Oh, there goes Austin. I'm currently getting my truck looked at by my son, who is an awesome mechanic, by the way. I'm going to be laying out my feet at 10.5 inches from either side. I'll pre-drill a couple of holes and install 4 screws that are 2 inches long. I realize that I'm so blessed to live out in the country where there are no rules and regulations, no HOA Karens, just me, my wife. Our kids are out of the house, but we have all of our critters and Mother Nature. We love having bonfires in the wintertime and oyster roasts. And we love when family and friends come by. So this year, we'll have enough sitting area for everybody. Now I just got to figure out where to put this. Now that I've got a bandsaw and YouTube is starting to pay off a little bit, I can expand my skill sets. And I've always wanted to create a round cutting jig for my bandsaw ever since I received it. So we're going to start by cutting down some 1/2 inch plywood at 20 inches. I'll bring the piece to my miter saw and cut it at 30 inches in length. I'm going to super glue a piece onto the back side of this, that way it acts as a stop. We'll take it over to the bandsaw and rip it until that stopper hits the bandsaw. Mark where your kerf starts and then mark half of the circumference of the circle you want to make. Take a piece of 1/8 inch rod, go ahead and drill a hole in that spot you marked. Insert the rod, take the piece you're going to be cutting the circle with and mark center. and you can drill a little hole right at the center of this piece. Set it on that rod, push the bandsaw jig forward, and start cutting your circle. This jig is perfect for coasters. However, I'm not going to be making coasters this time around. If you want to avoid drilling holes, like say in your coasters, what you could do is take a template and keep it mounted to your jig and double side stick tape the piece you don't want a hole in to your template to avoid putting a hole in it. For this project, I'm not worried about putting a hole in it, so we're just going to cut out 2 circles at 5.5 inches in diameter. I'm going to take and cut the leftover and use this piece over at my table saw. I'm going to use it to cut slots all the way around my circle. After I make my first cut, I'll take and turn it at a 1/2 inch, make a mark on my sled, and line up each kerf that I cut with that mark and cut the next slot. I'll continue this process until I make my way all the way around my circle. What I'm going to do next is take and rip some 1/8 inch strips, and these are the same size of the kerf of my blade, so they'll slide right in these slots that I cut in my circles. Can you guess what I'm making yet? This piece won't get much action, so I'm just adding some thin CA glue and a little bit of activator, and that should hold this thing together just fine. Before you get it enclosed all the way, go ahead and grab you a solar lamp. I've got one that has an adhesive back to it that I'm just going to stick to the top side of my piece on the inside of the lamp. This gives you an awesome outdoor lamp with a beautiful effect. I plan on selling a bunch of these. Rock stars, I know this video was a little bit different, but I hope y'all enjoyed. Until next time, get in your shop and make some sawdust. Skull.